All right, welcome back. We're gonna talk about some liners, some cylinder blocks, what's going on. So what's a liner? Liner is a removable cylinder, something for your piston to ride up and down in. So a parent bore block would be a block that does not have a liner. The whole block is cast, then it's machined with your cylinder right in there. They cost less to make, they're more rigid, they're more compact, so you can get a smaller package. Sounds pretty great, right? Except for when it comes time for a rebuild, or if there's any kind of catastrophic damage, you've got to remove that entire engine package, tear it all the way down, and send it off to a machine shop to have it repaired. That's a lot more downtime and potentially a lot more cost involved. So then we get to liners. You can have a dry sleeve or a wet sleeve. A sleeve is another term for a liner. A dry sleeve, there's not going to be any coolant that comes in contact with this anywhere. They're quick to install. The coolant doesn't damage or leak past the O-rings or anything. You won't get coolant down in your oil pan area that way. However, they have poor heat transfer because there's no coolant. They also have less life because of that heat transfer, and you can make less power because they can't dispose of that heat enough. So then we get to the more prominent wet sleeve or a wet liner. The coolant does come in contact with this liner. Therefore, you have a rapid heat transfer. They're easy to remove most of the time. Every once in a while they get stuck in place and you actually got to weld something in to be able to get something to really grab that thing and pull it out. We used to use our overhead crane. So, like I say, better heat transfer, easier removal. You can have higher horsepower because you can make more power since you can get rid of that heat. And they last a lot longer because, again, you're getting rid of that heat. The downsides is they're a little more prone to cavitation. Cavitation would be when you have coolant sitting up against this and this liner shakes a little bit each time that cylinder changes and each time it fires, to where those air bubbles trapped within the coolant are actually imploding and wearing away this metal here. In addition to having to really stay on top of your coolant so that you don't have cavitation, the O-rings right here can start to leak. And what's downstream of this? Well, you start getting into your crankcase and it'll be dripping right off of here down into your oil pan, down in your crankcase. So you can have coolant that leaks and you can have cavitation. You can see this one's got some cavitation too. And eventually that'll get bad enough to where that'll blow little pinholes through to the inside of your cylinder, and you'll start burning away that coolant and pressurizing the coolant. So beyond that, there's two different styles of wet liners or wet sleeves. You've got a top stop and you've got a mid stop. Both of these liners here are top stops. They've got your machined edge here, so as you install it down into the block, this is the edge that seats against the block and firmly determines where it sits within that cylinder block. You can see again your O-rings down here to try and prevent any of this coolant to leak down past and eventually get into your crankcase. The top stop are pretty good. However, the mid stops are becoming a little more prominent because they seem to resist that coolant leaking down better. Here in our C cutaway, you've got your cylinder liner. You have no machined stop surface on the top here. So here you can see your piston riding within your sleeve. No machined top stop up here. It's down here. That is the middle of the liner. Therefore, that is a mid stop. There's sometimes an O-ring down there. Sometimes they can even just be sealed with RTV. These ones, like I say, much less prone to leaking coolant down into the crankcase. You can kind of see here how if this O-ring did fail and coolant were allowed to bypass, you get down into here, and here you are. You're right down into your crankcase. You got your oil pan down here, your suction tube, weight of the crank. Here's a drilling, connecting rod. If you get coolant in your oil, that's a very bad thing. So parent bore blocks do not have liners. There's wet linered blocks, and they come in a top stop or a mid stop. The mid stop is less prone to leaking coolant, but is more prone to becoming distorted because you're putting all that pressure in the center of it, versus the top stop sitting right here, it's less prone to distortion. So pros and cons to both.